Alrighty, hello and welcome to everybody joining us for our event with Venita Blackburn and Gloria Edim tonight. I'm Erica and I'll be your host for tonight. Just before we get started, I want to let you know about a few upcoming events here at Green Apple. This Friday at November 12th, 6 p.m., we will be celebrating a reading for the works of some of the Bay Area's finest MFA students at 9th Avenue, featuring students from San Jose State University, St. Mary's College, University of San Francisco, and this event will be hosted by Sydney Vogel. And next Monday, November 15th at 6 p.m., Kyle Lucia Wu will discuss her new novel, Win Me Something, with Ming Chang. And if you have any more questions about our event calendar, it will be on our website, greenapplebooks.com/event. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our featured authors for this evening. Works by Venita Blackburn have appeared in NewYorker.com, Harper's, Story, McSweeney's, Apogee, Split Lit Magazine, and the Iowa Review, just to name a few. She received the Prairie Schooner Book Prize for Fiction, which resulted in the publication of her collected stories, Black Jesus and Other Superheroes, in 2017. She is the founder and president of liverightworkshop.com, an organization devoted to offering free creative writing workshops for communities of color. Her hometown is Compton, California, and she is an assistant professor of creative writing at California State University, Fresno. Gloria Edim is the founder of Well Read Black Girl, a book club turned literary festival based in Brooklyn, New York. Well Read Black Girl provides a vital space for Black women readers and writers to connect and grow in conversation. Since launching in 2015, Well Read Black Girl has steadily grown into a thriving online community of 235,000 passionate Instagram followers, and their goal is to showcase the universality of Black women through literature. Each month, Gloria hosts book club meetings, readings, and Twitter chats with emerging and established authors. Audience members, please know that you can leave your comments and questions in the chat and Q&A boxes below. And without further ado, enjoy the reading, everyone.
Hello, how are you tonight? Or this evening. I'm on the East Coast, so how are you, everyone watching? Thank you for joining us, Venita. It's so good to talk to you. I absolutely loved your book, so I'm thrilled to ask you so many questions. How are you doing this evening?
I am well, so things are going fine, and I'm excited to talk about sort of talk about myself, but mostly the book. I really don't. I'm a little bit over myself at this point in the year, but I will continue. And I think I have a bunch of students tuned in, so we can talk like writerly stuff as well.
Yeah, we can do all the above. I do have a lot of questions about the book. So this year I published my second anthology on girlhood, and when I saw your book, I was like, why didn't I get a story from Venita in the book? Like, everything in here is so perfect for the collection, and your writing is just so sharp and clear, and it has not only is it just original, but it's funny, and there's so much satire in it and energy that I was in love with it. This is my ARC. I have a final copy, but like my ARC is like beaten up and has my questions in it. So I'm gonna ask the most obvious question, but I would like to start at the beginning in terms of the title. I love the fact it's called How to Wrestle Girl, and my expectation was it's gonna be like some metaphor for something else. And then when I read the story, I was like, this is just so perfect. Tell me about you writing that story and how it led to the title of the collection.
Yeah, it was not the original title for sure, but I did have that part as part of sort of one of the stories that came out of the initial kind of mass draft I had, which was supposed to be a novel. So it was intended to be a flash fiction novel, sort of, one collected kind of world, same characters, same, kind of thing. But I kept writing all these side stories, in between it. And that was one of them that was sort of just connected to this kind of physicality within girlhood, within sort of urban environments and all that kind of stuff. And then this kind of perspective about the strength of women, of young women, and that I'm always kind of running up against too, even my own family. Like I recently visited my brother and my nephews. So I have a lot of dudes in my family. and like I have a ton of aunts, but we don't see each other. They're all, like on the East Coast and things like that. So all of my kind of close family, they're mostly just dudes, and they're all enormous. Like in my friend group, I'm the tallest of my friend group, but then all of my brothers and nephews are like, 5, 6, 7 inches taller than me. So it's like I'm suddenly becomes the weaker of all of them and all that kind of thing. So I've always had that issue with sort of, perspectives on the strength of the female body, kind of as I keep growing up and all that kind of stuff. And so I was thinking about that kind of thing. And then I actually stumbled onto a real life story of a girl wrestler who, who was running up against, other male wrestlers in her weight class that didn't want to wrestle her for all kinds of reasons. And I was like, okay, that's it. So I had that in my head as I kind of, approached the story to sort of go from there. And then I was just kind of walking through sort of queerness and femininity and all that kind of thing simultaneously. And then that was the one that had the themes that I think connected all of the other stories too, sort of the pressure, the kind of wrangling down what a girl should be and could be. So I said, yeah.
I think that like one thing I was so intrigued by was just like your stylistic choices, especially when it comes to sentence structure and how you play with grammar. The opening story is a great example of that. I have it highlighted here. Just my little sister, niece, granddaughter, daughter, baby cousin, the slash, like it just has such a richness to it. Can you talk about when you're writing, when you're constructing your sentences, what's that like for you? Like, how do you get into the mood of playing with language and really trying to like shape the perspective of the protagonist?
It is really important to me. So I do consider myself a sentence writer. Like, just the lines matter to me as much as sort of the grander story of things, and also
I can tell literally in every story, like I can tell like you are deeply intentional with your sentence structure. But let me let you continue.
I appreciate that because it is like a thing that I think about. I also think about the sounds of words and like sort of like language, and just in the characters' voices, they have to have that kind of distinct sort of sound to me when I'm reading it. Sort of and make sure they're sort of distinct from each other. That too is important. But even though I say that, like, like I just talked to my brother, and he's read some of the stories, and he's like, it just sounds like you talking to me. It's hilarious. So I'm like, I'm thinking I'm creating something, but it might just be my own voice and my own kind of, way of talking or whatever it is. But I try. And even when I'm in a bookstore, like being a looky little at Green Apple, just kind of shopping and not kind of buy anything, I always just open up books and read for a line. Like that will let me know how invested I should be. So I'll read the first and last line for sure, but then I have to do the random check. I just any place I have to sort of say that's a good line. So I'm going to see how this author is going to tie all of these things together. But even then, like with the sentence level kind of thing, it still has to speak to the previous and to the next in kind of this certain sort of rhythm and kind of this continuity within it that I do look for and listen for.
I appreciate that. It is such a really fine skill, and it shows like your level of craft and your attention to detail. I would like you to elaborate on that a little bit more, especially because you are a professor and this is like you're a master at this or teaching others. How do you define what a good sentence needs and how it like can be constructed together, especially in short story or in flash fiction?
Flash fiction is a great point. So when I tell my students, and I'm also a flash fiction propagandist, so I'm always promoting it. I'm like, yes, let's go do that. But it's, and it really helps too to look at your very first line of a story in flash fiction. It has to do a lot of things. So I always tell them it has to establish your character. It has to give me the circumstance, whatever the conflict, objective, whatever that might be. But it also has to give me a relationship. So now it has to tell me how this person is connecting to some other character, even if that other character is somehow part of themselves. And then it just has to be interesting. So like if you could do all of that in one sentence, you probably can carry a whole flash fiction story because you know exactly what you're dealing with from the very first line. You're not trying to work your way into it. You're not trying to describe the doorknobs and the lights and the trees and all this kind of, all this wonderful ambiance. You don't have time to do that. You have to get right to the narrative core, which is people, which is the human experience, and being able to sort of name that first. And yeah, so if your sentences, if every sentence can do some of that, then yeah, you're in good shape. One, to just like make it weird, but also is it connecting to some kind of central objective? the character, the situation, and a relationship? Is it all carrying that weight from one to the next all the time? Then you're doing something pretty magical. I can't do it all at the same time, but keeping some of those parts in order would be cool.
I think it's particularly important when you're doing a collection or you're doing a short story for that energy. Because for me, I don't know if this is like against the rules, but I don't tend to read in order. Like I like to skip around in short story collections. Yeah. Your titles really were intriguing to me. One story that I absolutely love is Lisa Bonet, and the fact that you use, that title, because already that character has so much, you have an idea of who that is and what the story is going to be about just simply by the title. So it made me really curious about how you decided your titles for each story and also the curation of it, because it feels like the book is essentially like in two parts, but I don't know if I was making that up in my head as I was reading it, but it felt like it was divided a little. Can you talk about the curation of the collection and your title selection?
Yeah, so titles, I always say that titles have to be both real and symbolic. So like a real object or kind of thing or something in the story, but connect to some other sort of kind of abstract emotional sort of, metaphor or symbol or whatever it is. So like Lisa Bonet, yes, for sure, Lisa Bonet is real. But the concept of Lisa Bonet is like so stretched out and like it manifested in all these, especially within Black culture, right? And people that grew up, with the Cosbys and all that kind of thing. And so I sort of saw the trajectory of the character, in the show versus the real actress and all of these sort of, things that have happened. And that represented kind of the life of sort of this particular couple and the partner. One that had sort of this image of self that was sort of trying to exist, but one that's in contrast to what is being truly perceived by the other partner. So all that kind of stuff matched up to kind of just the idea of celebrity and just facades and all that. So it worked in that way. But I like all titles to kind of work somewhat in that way, real and symbolic. Now the actual structure of the book. Now, like I said, it was supposed to be one novel, one kind of collection of flash, all the same things. But I kept writing all these different stories connected to the theme, but not the same characters. So I decided to keep the parts that were, with all unique worlds and different things together, and then group the collected characters together, and kind of structure the order of the stories in each half in a way that kind of sort of mirrored each other a little bit. So it sort of created like different sort of waves and anchors. Like I wanted the same feeling for each part of those parts. So it kind of worked like two hands on piano, kind of. I don't know if that makes sense, or if that even.
No, it does. For the reader, I did see that, but I couldn't put my finger on it exactly. I was like, I feel like the method, with her methodology behind this, but I don't know if I'm, making this up or this was her intention. So I did feel that. I need to know how you got your editor to agree to answer sheet, because I was like so surprised by it, but delighted at the same time. But like, what made you do that format and the crossword puzzle? And did you have any like pushback of like, actually, what does this story mean?
No, they were all for it. But the only thing was they had to readjust the format because it was not easy, I guess, when in that stage. But I don't care. It's not that's not my job to do the book layout. Like, you guys figure it out. They had to do a little bit of shifting to make it work just for the printing. But I was like, yeah, it's fine. Whatever you gotta do to make it work. I want it in there. And they were very accommodating by far, for sure. And I think the only change was sort of the order of the answer sheet, where I wanted to put it or something like that. And that was the only thing they kind of gave me some pushback on, but I was fine. They totally were on board.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. I'm really pleased to see when authors like play with format. But what made you want to do the crossword puzzle? And also, are you like a big crossword puzzle person? Or like, are you always a New York Times crossword puzzle? What made you want to write it that way?
I'm not, but I do like strategy kind of games like Sudoku and stuff like that. I will do it, but I'm not at all deep like into that kind of world. But I was thinking about the things that the character would encounter in kind of like a day-to-day situation, sort of the mundane things that this particular the narrator would run into. And the crossword puzzle made sense for me at that time, sort of like, and also just the title itself speaks to sort of the environment that was happening for the narrator. So I kind of wanted to filter the story through that text, the text that we encounter just in living, and kind of somehow embody the narrator and sort of have that fusion of literature and kind of the physical structures of text that we invent around ourselves. I just wanted to sort of play with that a little bit. So yeah, I don't know if I've seen a crossword puzzle elsewhere in things, but I knew I wanted that just based on the environment. And I often, do those kind of exercises with students, sort of like, how can you fill a certain, and it's not about sort of taking the traditional story and then making it into something else, but starting with the structure, the unusual structure, and then filling that up with your story as it will allow you to, and as it will dictate to you. So that was important to me too. So it existed in that format all the time.
So I also, because you have another story that kind of experiments with format and the grief log, and I would love to hear the backstory on how that came to be, and just like, again, the process with your editor, since it's like a non-traditional format.
Now that one did look a little different when I made it. So they had to break it up a little bit for the pages, because when I first had it, it was like just a clear chart, so you could see it all on one page and everything like that, and just very tiny text and stuff like that. And there was a version too that was handwritten, because for the original publication, that was kind of the idea to sort of make it very, very natural for the character. And specifically, I got the idea because I do work out, and when I'm at the gym, I'm not a total gym rat, but I do go regularly. But when you're there, you get to see the deep people, the ones that have personal trainers. Like, I'm cheap, I'm not paying for anything. But that is part of it, and they get books. So I'm always fascinated by the people that they log everything that they do when they work out, so to sort of measure their gains or whatever it is. I'm always fascinated by that because I don't do it myself. I'm just like in here, like whatever, do some stuff, and then leave. But then I'm like, yeah. So what are they? And athletes do this. So the deeper you get into sort of that world, you start to see like all of their techniques. That became a whole text to me. Sort of like, how do you record your gains and also your losses? Like, what can you do for a day-to-day? So I want to match that up to the tragedy that this character had just gone through, losing their father, and how to tie those two texts together, that experience. So then that's how the grief log manifested. So it's the same kind of idea as the crossword puzzle, but just a total different situation that was sort of going on. Yeah.
I think throughout, as with every reading, I was just it felt like just like all these Easter eggs and great surprises with the characters or the format. And I was really delighted by your writing style. And I wanted to talk about, how does one cultivate that kind of like freeness that you have in your writing? What it reads to me as like a liberation. Like, you don't seem to feel resistant to play with form, and that's not something that comes naturally for a lot of folks. So if you have any kind of words of advice on how to just be just more open with your writing and try new things. And then I have another question too as a follow-up, but I'll let you go.
I have two parts to that answer. We'll see how it goes. But I know when I was first starting to write and commit to being a writer, I was very resistant to that idea. One, because I thought it wouldn't make any money. Like, I can be an artist. I want to be, almost anything else that will guarantee me a solid, salary and some kind of esteem amongst, people and that kind of thing. But I was constantly kind of falling into, not the trap, but falling into the world of being a teacher and an artist. And it's like, eventually I started yielding to that when I was in an undergrad, sort of higher upper division undergrad classes. Like, you know what? I love English, but I was reading all of these works, and sort of similar to the ones that are in your anthology, Toni Morrison, and Alice Walker, and I'm reading all of these, the juggernauts like James Baldwin and everything. I'm like, these are great, they're so amazing. And I thought I had to write like that. So I was always sort of writing very more traditional kind of modernist work, and sort of being very, not funny, but being very serious and trying to understand the Black experience. And, and it wasn't that good, clearly, but I was also like 20. So like but then I discovered some other writers like C.Z. Packard and Zadie Smith, and these writers, these women that were funny. And actually, that encountering those kind of works, it sort of allowed me, not to say that Toni Morrison is not playing Toni Morrison. It's funny, but also was terrifying. So it's a different thing. So that kind of gave me the permission to kind of to be a little more free with the way I thought and making that match up to how I wrote, how I write. So there's just kind of before there was just this disconnect between my philosophy of the world and kind of the things that amuse me and entertain me versus what I thought I could do on the page. So once that kind of started to fuse together and melt together, that was definitely kind of permission to go wild. And then I started to learn more and more about what I enjoyed. Like I hadn't even found all of my favorite books yet. We were that young, we still sort of were reading and learning. But once I started to get that experience, I said, okay, yeah, we can start to do experiments, things that you might not have seen before. You can start to create the world that you want to see and write for yourself. So if anything, I would give advice to is sort of make sure you're entertaining yourself first. You're writing, for that person in the chair, it's you. And then after that, write to be understood by anyone else, because sometimes it does not translate. And also, no matter how long you've been writing, you're going to still make mistakes where that interpretation does not match up with your initial vision. So, and that's the risk that we take as artists. But that's also part of just living. And that would be my only advice for sure as a start. Write for yourself. Dare to be understood after that.
That is great advice, and it speaks to just your authenticity. Like it you feel it on the page. The follow-up to that was as a editor, and I read so many short stories when I was like putting together my next collection, and immediately I felt like your work is in conversation with ZZ Packer because it has that, again, that like sharpness, that funniness, but also like that deep reflection that happens when you're just a kid with something that you didn't expect. It also came, Toni K. Bambara came to mind, reading your work as well. And How to Wrestle Girl really felt like a collection of really beautiful coming of age stories. And, my anthology was a collection of that. It's definitely looking at coming of age for Black women and making sure Black girls move into womanhood, and making sure those stories felt complicated and nuanced and had just texture to them. Like I want people to see like our rough and smooth edges. And you do a great job of sharing that in a way that feels gentle and nurturing, but also very, very honest. So my question is, when we are, writing a coming of age story, especially for this like new generation, I feel like that was the one thing I was missing in my collection. Like I wanted something that really spoke to like this Generation Z, like, the folks that are coming that are future readers. Was that your intention in terms of putting this together? Did you feel like this was a collection of coming of age stories? And when we're writing about, girlhood in the future, how do you envision that? Because I really felt like you were speaking to this like next generation.
I like the idea that I was not intending to speak to the next generation at all. I had my own self, like I said, right for yourself, but it was that version of me, 25 years ago that didn't have a book like this, a book with, queer people, queer girls, Black girls, all of them, strong in a way, but all, running up against a lot of, resistance, but still having a good time sometimes. So it's not at all tragedy or, trauma porn by any means. But there is still sort of the difficulty of living and being a girl under those circumstances. I wanted that book when I was that age and I didn't have it. So I kind of wanted to write it for that version of myself and anyone that kind of would identify with that. So that was kind of the thing I had in mind. It wasn't, I was looking kind of at the past more so than the future. But I think the future is open to that version of life and literature in a way that has not been, the case for a long time. So that's exciting. It's good for business. I would write anyway, no matter what. But I did think about that. Now I do think about the Gen Zs a lot. The Zs, I call them the Zs, and and they're fascinating. I'm really into and support their perspectives on gender and the kind of fluidity in that. And there's a spiritual truth in there that we have been neglecting for a long time, that I think they're getting ready to really articulate and do something important and spectacular with it. They can't be puritanical. They are some judgy mofos, so don't put it past them. They will police everything that's going on out of our mouths. But go ahead.
It is like a lot of Capricorns. Generation Z. I have a younger brother. Like we have a huge age gap. So I think he's in Generation Z. But I'm always so amazed at his like level of articulation and just like all the things he's thinking and considering that I had no idea when I was his age. And I'm just like, wow, this is incredible. But are you judging me? So I feel you on that.
They most certainly are. And I guess I'm just naturally kind of relaxed about it. And like, I will totally, have a battle and not even, break or whatever with them. Like, you want to talk about it, we can talk, we can work it out. But at the same time, it's like, I love you. I love that you're daring to do this and just have these kinds of, perspectives. I don't know how the world's gonna, turn out in the end. I don't know if we've all messed up a little too far and like you guys are gonna bear the brunt of it. I don't know. But I'm glad that we're thinking about it. And I think we are getting ready to go into sort of, it might take another generation. I don't hope, but I'm not as expectant of sort of a big shift super fast. I think it is going to be gradual. I think it's going to go in a direction that will be really enlightening for all of us in this kind of
I agree with you. I think there is something so profound and beautiful to watch, like future generations really tackle issues that I would say our generation and before was afraid of, and I'm with it. Like, I love the discourse. I love the debate. I love being wrong. Like, honestly, I'm not that active on Twitter, but most of the times I'm just like, look, let me see what the youth are saying, because it is wonderful and it's active. And they're engaging with social media in a way where they're taking their power back, like with all this, stuff that's happening right now. It's like, no, we get it. Whereas I would say like we were on the cusp of like analog moving into digital and just like still kind of both feet in both. And the next generation are like, no, we will not be taken advantage of. We understand, we get what Bezos and everybody else is doing, like
I see
I'm for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think
I'm all
about the social media thing, like I know there's like this toxicity, sure, it's kind of obvious to people now, but there's this self-regulation kind of thing it's trying to balance itself out, where it's no longer a tool that's manipulating, but they're finding ways to sort of re-manipulate the tool to make sure that it is doing what it probably morally should do, even though it was not designed for moral purposes, if that makes sense.
I see that. I definitely do see that, but it's just like all the underpinnings of like that, of what Facebook and all these like platforms are. It's I see that happening in the culture and in the conversation, but at the same time, like, Facebook is still manipulating things and everything else. I don't even want to talk about Facebook. Let's get back to your book.
That's all.
Oh my gosh.
I'm an artist. Like, I'm on that stuff when I have to be, or whatever it is. But I try, and also like I'm in this whole new state of not having a lot of digital relationships. Like, I don't want to to exist in those spaces primarily with anybody. It's like I do it for my aunts because they live so far away. So like we do like 1 hour gardening sessions on Zoom sometimes, like with one of my aunts, and that's really, it's cute. But but I don't want to do that with anybody else. Except for you, Glory, every once in a while. But everyone else is like, it has to be in person. I have to see you, and I have to sort of get the full energetic experience of people and not sort of do this other unnatural kind of thing.
I'm telling you, I think there should be a balance. I like to remind people that in my situation, especially with the platform, it is a tool and it's a way to connect and build visibility. And if we use it in a way that has, that's morally and community oriented and has just like all the good things that we want to do. And my golden rule is, if I can't say it to your face, I'm definitely not going to say it on social media. Like, I think that's just a good rule to go by. And that's why I had to turn, Well Read Black Girl into a book, into a festival, because I wanted the same thing. Like I can't just, sustain myself on digital relationships. They're valuable to a certain extent. And then at the end of the day, we don't own these platforms. So it's so like essential for you to understand that, and you use it you use it for your own goodness, but not let it use you. But it is challenging. It's such a challenging thing that I've been trying to like set more boundaries and pull back as well.
And I think boundaries are also,
Yeah.
I think, just having that language too, like the Zeds, they really are being more cognizant about the word boundary, like figuring that out. And also that their relationship with the concept of work is starting to impress me as well. Like I tell everybody, work is a scam. Dude, your labor is one of the most valuable things on this planet that you have. Be careful who you give it to and what you get in return for it. So being able to say no is important. And I think they're sort of recognizing that. They have kind of this relationship with the boomers too. I think the boomers were more into boundaries. They designed their work weeks better. They had more vacations and all kind of things. And I feel like there's this connection there that they're finding. But yes, all of these old habits, they're kind of bad habits that we built into our culture, are going to be undone slowly and with some finesse, I think, in the coming generation. I was going to ask you though. So, what are you doing next with Well Read Black Girl? So, what's the next?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So, the next big thing is we're doing a podcast. We're having a Well Read Black Girl podcast, and it's coming out in February. So, if folks look up wherever you can find your podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, etc. So we're in production now. We have some really amazing interviews like coming with. I can't say what it is yet, but tune in. And it's been something that I've been dreaming about and working towards for like I want to say the last 2 years. But the pandemic happened, and then I had a baby, and all these things happened. So it kept being like push back. So it's finally kind of happening February of next year. So it's been really exciting. That's like the biggest like next thing. And we just had our 5-year anniversary. I'm just really trying to think of ways to do more community building in person and find other ways to connect beyond like the book club setting. But like I love what you're doing with writing courses and workshops and working with more young people. So there's a lot of dreams. So I'm just like trying to take it like one day at a time and be gentle with myself as it grows and set boundaries, what we just talked about. And I'm just doing more reading too. Like I know I keep saying it, but it was just such a joy to sit with your book and like get lost in it. And like I obviously like talk about books on social media a lot, but sometimes I'm just like, this is just mine. I'm just gonna like sit with it for a little bit and really just like relish the feeling of it. I think now that Well Read Black Girl is like my full time, like I'm an entrepreneur, like reading has taken on a different relationship because I'm like editing in my mind and thinking how I'm going to like share it publicly. So sometimes it's nice to have like, this is my private book. So I was really excited to talk to you in this format to share it publicly, but I did hold it on closely. It's just like me like reading quietly and like in my bed before I went to bed.
I think you're totally.
Yeah, it's just.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, I really enjoyed your book. So I think I answered your question though.
Absolutely. But I was just going to say that you're living the dream of like turning, what you love to do for just joy, for just play into your, to your work, like fusing those things. That's the sort of, I love that. I love that it happened, you can sort of see that radiate from you. But yeah, that is the goal for people to sort of make sure that whatever it is that brings you all of that delight, you can use that to sort of generate your life and sort of your whole existence outside of it, and figure out the joys, like the creation of new things out of it. So it started small and kind of keeps going. That's fun when you can sort of have that engine going in your brain in a way that's just sort of really enriching your own existence. That's really cool.
It is. I do feel really grateful for it because it is a path that came unexpectedly, and I like each day I am learning new things, and I'm trying to be more self-compassionate and being able to like identify what's the next step, because at one point I was like, okay, like, is this something I just do for a couple of years and then I sunset it, or do I like pass it on to someone else? Is this a legacy project? Is it just a short-term thing versus long-term? There were all these questions I had in my mind. And a lot of them were tied to capitalism too, because, previously I worked for like a startup, and, the startup salaries are totally different versus coming to, freelancing or becoming an entrepreneur yourself. But it's been so rewarding. I've learned a lot in the process, and it's also made me just more resilient in terms of just like I've always been a person to kind of keep on keeping on. I don't give up easily, but it's something new about this is bigger than me, and I'm like I feel really fueled by the community. Like when I talk to you or talk to other authors and they share like their experiences, it like something about it kind of puts another penny in my little bank of like goodness. I'm like, okay, I can keep doing this. Because in the beginning, I'm just like, I'm gonna work my full-time job and I'm gonna just do this on the side. And then there was a moment where I was like, okay, like I can do this full time and I can really make this like my livelihood. And once that shift happened, I think more opportunities started to present themselves and open up. So yeah, but I feel like, as you said, as an artist, like those things, you have to be like, you have to have like a goal, but I feel like you have to be like fluid in your plan of getting to the goal. Like, did you always know you were gonna like write a book? Was that like, I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna look, this is again what I'm gonna be doing. Did you always know that from the very beginning?
I knew that was going to happen. I really didn't have any doubt about the book. I just didn't know when and how it would manifest. And for me, it wasn't sort of early. Like I graduated from my MFA, I was 22 or ish or something like that when that happened. And then it got, no, 25, I was about 25-ish. And then I lost my mom. So it was like a whole tragedy of like, all your world is like all crazy. So that slowed down my writing for a long time. So I was sort of just doing piece, and I was trying to work, I had to support myself. So I was doing all that and trying to, but I still wrote. So I still sort of kind of kept, a couple stories here every year, and I would publish them and just, slowly. And eventually I did have a whole manuscript that I could send out. And that was Black Jesus and the Superhero, my first book. And so that one, I was like, okay, yeah, I did the book. I had no other plans beyond that. I was like, oh, now what? What happens when you have a book? Like, I'm like, what are you supposed to do when you have it? And then I realized, oh, you're supposed to get a full-time job and be a professor of creative. I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. I've been teaching. Okay, I like that. So I just sort of kept going with sort of this other trajectory that I had no idea. I didn't even think about a second book. Like, oh, that's right. I need to I'm doing another one. I was still writing, but it never occurred to me that I'm supposed to keep doing the same thing over and over again in a kind of way, because that's not how my pattern works. So I was like, how do I expand this and sort of reconnect? So that's how my creative writing community project got started, sort of the workshop and things, sort of figuring out how do I fuse these two things and create something new that's interesting, sort of going outside of just the normal academic environments and that kind of thing. So the community thing was really important too. So I like that you had that investment.
I would love to hear about how the community has grown and how it influences your writing and your work in general. And I also want to know, you said something really stood out to me, just like you knew you were going to have the book, but you didn't know how it was going to manifest. And that like, I think that feeling of the uncertainty of how, like, it's going to happen, but you don't know how, right? But it's like this artistic space, or even as an entrepreneur or just a creative person, I don't know, we don't have to put a necessary label or title on it, but like if you have a creative spirit and you have the goal, it's like, I know it's going to happen. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I know it's going to happen. And I feel like that energy really does take you far when you're doing things that are unconventional and unexpected. It's like, okay, I know this is going to happen. I just have to have like consistent faith in myself. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that more people need to hear that. That's how things come together. Like you just have to believe in yourself.
And focus that energy onto that thing. I'm not a big kind of woo-woo person, but there is like a lot of woo-woo in my own, just the way I act. It's like, yeah, if you think it, you can be it. You can, there's a lot of value to that, kind of just focusing your positive sort of thoughts, or just kind of your focus on something, and kind of make sure you're tying your energy and your actions toward it. It will happen. If you are consistent, don't sit around and dream though. There's a different thing between just sort of dreaming and kind of, actively, engaging in the thing that you're trying to accomplish. So making sure that's happening. Like for me, though, the first book, I did it totally butt backwards, Glory. I did not do this book, like publish it the way normal people publish their first book. I did not have an agent. I didn't go through a traditional sort of big house, any of that. It just won a contest out of nowhere. I just sort of said, okay, let me slide this in an envelope and send it to this contest. It was more like a poet. Like that's how the poets usually get their first books out and things like that. So it was not normal. So I got my agent extra late in the game. I had already had a full-time job, already had the book. It's like, oh, okay, an agent, I guess they do something. They do something, they make you more money. So there is something to that, for the second book. That was a whole different process. And that was more of a traditional kind of route to go. Doing more research might help for some people. So, but yeah, I did the energetic thing. I was like going in that direction. I was working on also just the craft itself. So for me, I'm terrible at promoting. I'm terrible at sort of the business side of things. I really do engage in sort of like the language. That's what excites me. Just the sentences, like that's what I'm here for. I'm here for that part of it primarily. I'm trying to lower that percentage a little bit. So maybe it's like 91% art thing and like 9% like business stuff, maybe. But yeah, I need to do something maybe around that way. But school teaching pays for groceries. I'm not worried about it. It'll all round out, eventually. But yeah, then for the community stuff, I wanted to be able to pay other writers though, in order to sort of join, the workshops and give that access to people that don't normally have that access. Like, universities can pay thousands of dollars to bring famous authors in, but it's not open usually for everybody to learn from them and actually have their work read and sort of, processed from, people that aren't, students and that kind of thing. So I wanted to sort of bring that access, of really talented, amazing people of color, writers of color, to the people that would really benefit from them, but that would never probably have that experience. I want to be able to sort of do that, but also, pay for the labor that takes for those people. So I did get a grant once, so I was able to do that for a while. So I got a California Humanities grant that helped pay for a lot of that. But we're dry now, so I'm gonna once I finish I got all my tenure stuff out of the way. I have more time to apply for grants and do all that stuff. So hopefully, I don't hope, but expectedly, like 2022, 2023, we'll get that cycle going again, and have some more engagement there. But yeah, so I was really important. It was important sort of to make sure my philosophy about labor was being honored as well, and sort of that artistic kind of outreach.
I think I want to take it back to the story because I have some questions before. I know we're almost at time, but there are two stories. So this is for my personal indulgence, right? Just go with it. That I would love to hear your reasoning behind them. So, can you explain? Side effects includes dizziness, ringing in the ears, and memory loss. That's the first one. I want to know like your thought process as you wrote this story, and then. I also, hold on, let me find it. Where's my notes? Oh, this is right in the beginning. Bear Harvest TM. I did not know what was happening. I kept reading. I was like, am I missing something? So those are the two that I was just like, I really love side effects and just like the flow of it. But I'm just curious about just like your process of writing it and what it means to you. And then Bear Harvest, I just need like the full explanation, like what is happening.
Okay, I'll give you like the plot rundown. I'm not big on plot, but it's like in there, like a little touch of it. But I'll give you some of that one. But side effects, I always tell my students too to write about the sacred things, the things that trouble you. And for me, like one of my biggest fears, I have a lot of phobias, like random stuff like mushrooms. I'm not talking about that one, but I'm like losing my mind is like big on like worst fear type things, sort of, losing your memory, losing your cognition, your all of that kind of stuff. So I value my mind so much, like that would be really like the worst. So it's like, so what do you do? What would that look like? So I was kind of in that mind state of sort of seeing how do you unravel, how do you catalog a life that's sort of emptying out, in these sort of unregulated or sort of, without pattern, without kind of a system of justification or rhythm or anything. How do you lose that? It's kind of like just spilling like, salt on the table, like what comes out. And so I was sort of thinking about that as I was sort of structuring it. And I also kind of thought about just me. So a lot of it is just like stuff that I thought about like for my own personal life. And then also like the worst parts of yourself and the things that you never would get to share. All of that happens if you start to lose your mind. Like you no longer have any kind of sense of what's appropriate and all of that kind of thing. And I do run into, friends that have, family members and things that are going through dementia and all that kind of stuff. And it's just really, it's such a powerful state to be in, to be a witness to that, let alone be, the one that's going through it. So that was kind of, a heavy thing. But so I was thinking about stuff like that when it came together. Now for Bear Bear Harvest. Now Bear Bear Harvest was really fun for me, as just I was thinking about astrology too a lot for that one, sort of just patterns in people and the incompatibility of some signs for one another. So I know I had that in my mind too. I think the mom is the Leo Virgo and the daughter's a Scorpio or something like that. And I know it's just a random thing, but I know that I'm a Leo with a Virgo rising, and I know I don't get along with Scorpios very well. But I was just thinking, what if you had one as a daughter and you just can't, like you guys are not compatible, but you love each other, and there's like this power. They're both very powerful, like Leos and Scorpios, powerful kind of people and personalities. What would that look like? And then I was sort of thinking about that, and then it grew into this sort of generational kind of exercise about legacy and about and the economy of that. So the whole thing, spoiler alert. So essentially, the great grandfather or something created this product that essentially takes the fat out of people's bodies and turns it into a food product. So that's kind of the the varied plot of the situation. And then there's the father who is no longer able to sort of morally handle this inherited wealth, this inherited condition, this status based on something that is pretty grotesque. And
yes. Because I was like, Bear Bear doesn't believe harvest is beautiful anymore the way my mom and I do. And I was like, wait, what? Like I kept listen. I was just like, I need to just ask her. I need to know the details of the story. Sorry for the spoiler, y'all. Read everything. It's so good. But that was when I was like, I'm just gonna talk to her directly.
That's totally fine. And also, like I said, sometimes you bury your intention, but I didn't want the intention to be mostly just the relationship and that kind of subtle disconnect that we end up developing for various reasons. That was the primary story for sure. But yeah, it is about cannibalism. Glory. So what can you do just a little bit? Yeah.
I was that's honestly in my notes. I was like, is this? I was thinking that, but I was like, am I like, no, okay. I'm glad to hear you say that. Okay. Okay. So I do want to give the room, if there is anyone who has questions, you can throw them in chat, you can put them in the Q&A box. I do want to hear about, especially because I know you're so well read and you have so many great references, but and you mentioned them earlier, some of the greats. Are there any other contemporary writers that you're excited about, or you feel like your work is in conversation with? I just love to hear what's on in your library or what's sitting on your nightstand right now.
My nightstand is weird right now. I'm reading a book about death, the first 5,000 years. That's I do recommend it. It is interesting. But in terms of fiction, I'm a total fangirl for Justin Torres always. I mentioned this to Erica too. Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, Friday Black, love that collection. I have my students read that one. So that one's cool. Who's sitting around here? I also read random sci-fi stuff. So if it's got lesbians in space, I'm all about it. So so that kind of thing. Oh, there's one, How to Lose the Time War. I always recommend that one. I think it's just very romantic and weird and poetic and it's sci-fi, stuff. So it's got that. I watch a lot of cartoons. I mean, expose yourself to all kinds of different mediums.
I watch a lot of cartoons too. What are you watching? Are you watching Big Mouth? I know it's the one everyone's watching on Netflix. What are you watching on?
That one's a little disturbing. Eventually, it's I can't keep watching this creepy freaking show. You're 4 episodes in, you're just grossed out a little bit. Oh. But I love like Steven Universe, Bob's Burgers. I watch those.
We have to meet. I love Bob's Burgers. I what it's my piece. It's the way I zen out. I love. Oh my God, Linda is my homegirl. I love Bob's Burgers so much. Okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, this is why why we buy it, Corey. This is it. But yeah, I'm totally, I have all kind of Bob's Burger swag. Like I don't buy it for myself, but my friends and family will totally like give me Bob's Burger stuff because they know I love it. Like I like socks and mugs and all kind of what else? Yeah, but I other cartoons right now. There was one new one. Oh, She-Ra, that one's gay. I was watching that one for a while. So yeah.
Oh, it looks like we have one question. Okay, so is Smoothies based on a personal experience, a series of experiences? It's wonderfully powerful.
Thank you, JB. And it is kind of based on a personal experience. I do know that I had a situation when I was much younger, and I was in the mall, but I was with my mom, and I wore like my baseball hat backwards or something because it was the 90s, and I was just being ridiculous and just like, it would be cool. And for some reason that struck her as like this sort of offensive act that I didn't quite understand. And so yeah, I was kind of like chastised for that in that moment. And I wasn't hurt by it, but I was sort of thinking like, why is this such a big deal? And I know it was something related to sort of queerness and kind of this manifestation of masculinity that wasn't sort of jiving for my mom at the time. And I just thought it was quaint and kind of, just silly, just her being silly and whatever. But then later it kind of kept processing it, sort of this feeling of judgment and how your body is not your own, and sort of you're being reshaped in the vision of someone else that you can't even yet recognize. So I was thinking about that feeling when I started writing Smoothies, and it became this other kind of, grander kind of, philosophical, giant, cosmic kind of outlook on humanity within a tiny space. So I kind of wanted to do that big sort of, leap and flash fiction with it, but that was my intention. So a little bit personal, then got really big. How's your kid doing? Want some attention? Thank you, Jamie.
He's just gonna join the conversation. Say hello. You want to say hi to everybody? Everyone watching? Hello. Hi, Miss Venita. Yeah. So we're going to do one more. If anyone else has any questions, please again put them in the chat. And thank you for sharing like your library and what like inspires you right now, what's giving you just creative energy. I think for the last question, I think I'd love to hear just what do you have going on next? Like what are you writing or dreaming towards or manifesting, as we said earlier? And if you have any like advice for aspiring writers, what would that be?
Okay, those are big questions. I am writing 2 books simultaneously, which I don't recommend, but I know there are a couple of other writers I know that do the same thing. I just don't have the time to even write the first one that I know I need to, my deadline is coming up and I've got to do this freaking book. So I'm trying to finish this whole draft, and it is, it's going to be kind of a stretch for me. It's going outside of my usual genres, whatever they might be. So I'm going big, going speculative, but still trying to sort of focus in on like these urban questions and urban environments and questions of femininity and queerness and identity and that kind of thing by reaching far, far into the future and also far, far into the past with the kind of voice I'm dealing with. So I'm having fun with it. I was worried about it for a while, so I hadn't written on it for a couple of months. And I was like, I don't even know if it's good. I don't know what's going on in there. And then I read some of what I wrote. I was like, yeah, I like it. It's not fine. Okay, good. So I can keep working with it and go forth, because I do have moments where I go back and read something. I'm like, this is not what I meant. This is not okay. Scratch. I might salvage one paragraph out of the whole, whatever pages, but it can happen. But this movie, I was fortunate. It's still working for me. I'm doing that and another book. But that's just another book. So we'll see what happens with that one. But those are the main projects right now. And then a whole bunch of like random teaching things and going on.
That sounds so amazing. I'm so thankful that we have this opportunity to talk. I will be singing your praises online and offline. And I think we should get together and watch Bob's Burgers soon.
I love the holiday episode. I'm looking forward to the Christmas one. But thank you for hosting. I'm glad we got to meet, Lori, too.
Thank you both for sharing your stories with us. And thank you everybody for tuning in. You can order, there we go. You can order both our authors' wonderful books either at greenapplebooks.com or come on down to any of our locations. Be well, everyone, and have a great night. Bye.